Welcome to part 10 of the Blender 2.80 Absolute Beginners course, the part after which you're not gonna be an absolute beginner any longer, you're just gonna be a beginner. But that's a great achievement in my opinion. In this part, we will just rehearse the whole knowledge we already learned throughout those previous 9 videos. So let's just get into it quickly. I'm gonna show you how to create a very basic scene, and it's gonna be an easy, nice looking scene which I really hope you're gonna like. And yeah, we will just create a few more trees in comparison to what we did before, and I will show you how to create very first and easy materials, and how to add camera and how to set up some lights. This is a little bit more than we're already used to. These are the things that will be explained in a detail a little bit later, but I think you're a very bright, intelligent person and you're gonna get it all. So, as you can see, I'm just creating those two planes which have some thickness. And you might have noticed I did it all from just a cube object. A cube object, which is a beloved object of mine and yours, I hope, uh, is the most widely used piece of geometry in Blender, uh, a base for many objects, as you will learn later. And yeah, I will be just using it to create this very little scene. So as you can see, I'm just playing around. I'm just adding more cubes, which are just of different scales. And let's imagine for a second that these are the rocks or something like this. I really hope we can imagine that. So I'm just adding them around, and I'll be adding a little more of them, and I'll be adding some trees in a second. Let's just add a few more. So the shortcuts that I'm using are the very same shortcuts we have already learned. Sorry for my English. And so the way I'm copying the object is by using the Shift D shortcut to scale them up like this. I'm using an S button, and to move them around, basically you can see I'm just using the gizmo handles, but you can of course do it by shortcuts as well. So when I press Shift D and Y key, you can see it slides like this. When I press R and Z, I rotate it like this. When I press S and Z, I scale it, I shrink it like that. So let's pretend we create some rocky environment in here. I will just scale this up a little bit, scale it down, and let's say this is a cliff, a very we called it a low poly as a 3D nerds, but let's imagine it's a cliff. Let's imagine it looks like something. So now I can speed up my work significantly by just selecting everything with a Shift key pressed. I will switch to wireframe just to show I have everything selected. And by pressing Shift D, I just copy everything and I save myself a lot of time. So you can see this kind of looks like it repeats itself, but I can just rearrange the stuff right now just by sliding and rotating it a little bit. Just moving like this, maybe like that. Maybe let's make this a little bit bigger like that. Push this a little bit forward, move this here and this object here. Maybe we can scale it like this. And maybe we can just duplicate this a bit more. So you can see all of the sudden we just created this pretty cool looking thing. Let's extend this surface a little bit, and this one as well. So I'm just doing it by scaling. And yeah, we have a good starting point. So now let there be light. We will make a cool stuff. I press Z key and switch to rendered view. As you can see, it looks pretty flat and uninteresting. So by clicking add and going down to the light section, I, let's say, choose the easiest lamp possible, the light. So it's gonna be a point light. When I move it around, you can see some stuff is actually happening. This is, you're gonna admit it looks interesting. It's not like a super fancy video game, but it looks interesting and it is cool. So let's duplicate this light and let's put another one here maybe. Let's duplicate it again and move another one here, and let's duplicate it even one more time. So as you can see, when I just grab it like this, it goes below the surface. So when I press Shift Z, I know it stands on the same level, so it doesn't disappear. Let's just keep those lamps like this for now. We can move them further later. So let's start adding something more interesting like trees. So again, I will click add mesh and select a cylinder. Yes, here. So this is my cylinder. Now I will press S and Shift Z. So we create something that looks like a tree trunk. Shift Z. And now let's add some color. This is stuff that's going to be explained later again, but you can just copycat the thing that I'm doing right now. So here you have those many icons. You might have tried clicking on them if you just hold your mouse left button and drag. It switches between them. There is a multiple options here, but we will focus just on this ball here. And this is the material tab. To add a new material, you simply click new here and you have a material. This is its name, and these are the settings. Please don't be overwhelmed. Just focus on this one bar here, which is a base color. So when you click on it with your left mouse button, you have this color wheel, and just by left clicking and holding, you can select a color. So let's go for something that looks like a brown color, which is going to be around here. And here you can change the brightness of the color. And if you move towards the center, you change the saturation. So you see it becomes gray. More to the center, it becomes gray. More to the side, it becomes saturated. So let's use something like this, maybe like that, and make it a bit darker. One thing, please remember, this color will be only visible in the rendered mode, in this one. So if you switch to solid, you still get back to those gray looking things in wireframe as well. Well, when you switch to render, this color will be visible. Just keep in mind, in rendered view you'd need those lamps. Otherwise, let's just select them and press H. Otherwise it's gonna look like this if you don't add them. So I press Alt H to reveal everything, and we keep on working. So we have a tree trunk, and let's now create an actual tree. So I will rehearsing the knowledge. You can add objects by clicking here, or you can press Shift A and have this menu available from here. So I will create a cone, move it like this, Let's scale it up like that. Yeah, maybe like this. And let's add another material. And let's change the color to something like this. Come on, you gotta admit it looks cool. So now I select tree trunk and the actual tree, and now I place it somewhere around here. So let's duplicate it, and when I press Shift D, you can see the tree flies away. When I move it here, it goes to the ground. So I again hold Shift and press Z, so it stays on the same level. So again, Shift D, Shift Z. And there is another cool shortcut I want to tell you. So Shift D, Shift Z for the first time. Let's say I want to create a row of trees here. So I can do it by just pressing Shift D and Y, let's say, for example. Again, Shift D and Y. But after doing this for the first time, I can hold Shift and press R. You see what I did here? So the Shift R repeats the last operation that I did. So if I move the tree like this and press Shift R, it's gonna move to this location. So, and if I duplicate it, it's gonna duplicate towards the direction I've chosen. So again, let's just move this tree here. Shift D, Shift Z, let's say here. And when I press Shift R, you can see the tree is gonna repeat. So I will Control Z just to remove those unnecessary trees. And yeah, that looks pretty interesting. You're gonna admit that. Let's just scale those trees down a little bit. Let's maybe add some bushes around the cliff. Obviously, these are gonna be very schematic things, but just by pressing Shift A, I will create an icosphere maybe. And when I press SZ and maybe SX, it's gonna be something. It looks more like a bread right now, but yeah, you can play around. Doing those scaling operations, this reminds me of sculpting things, or when you play with a clay. So you can deform objects. First do something like this, then you can press on it and make it like that. So imagine you're doing something similar in 3D. So you're actually sculpting and creating the like manipulating this volume of an object. So yeah, we have something that looks like something green around the cliff. And again, Shift D, Shift Z, we can scale it. We can move it. We can now scale it down a little bit. Shift D, Shift Z. Let's make it like this, maybe here. Again, Shift D, Shift Z. Scale up. Shift D, Shift Z, S, Z right now. Maybe let's make something small like that. And let's add some of those small elements here as well. So I will do Shift D, Shift Z, just like that, and now Shift R. And now I can just move them. So this Shift R shortcut is also very useful if you want to copy things quickly and then and maybe align them later like this. And let's just make this one a bit bigger, this one like that, maybe SZ, something like this. This one can be very big. Maybe these we can move here somewhere and scale them as well. SZ like this. And this one we can scale down. So you see, I'm using all of the same transformation tools over and over again. Moving, scaling. I think I wasn't just rotating anything at this point, but you get the idea. It's almost always the same 3 tools we are using in Blender. So right now, let's maybe actually do some rotations. What about making a river, a stream? Let's select this plane and scale it like this. Move it here. Maybe scale it a little bit more like that. Now I will duplicate it and press Y key. So we have something like this. Maybe let's scale it up like that a little more. So we have this cut in the area. And I will duplicate it one more time by pressing Shift D and Z right now. And let's add some depth here. Press SY like this. We might need to move our elements. Let's move it here maybe, and this one here. So now let's duplicate this element one more time. Shift D Z. Now I scale it like this, and now I press R and X. So let's do something like this. Maybe rotate it a little bit more. Like that. Now I press Shift D again and Y, and I press R and X. So I rotate it again. So we have a river bank. Let's imagine it's a river bank. I will create a plane object, place it here, and let's add a material and make it blue, like water. Water is never blue, but for some reason we just like thinking that it is. I mean, water is transparent usually, and it just reflects the sky, which is blue. But anyway, enough of that nerdy talking. Let's just keep working, and yeah, you can see by scaling like this, we have a river. Wow, that was unexpected, right? So now let's keep on adding a few more trees, maybe a different kind. So I will move the 3D cursor here so they are not created in the river. Let's press Shift A, cylinder. Let's just scale it like this. And again, the way I'm scaling things like that is I am pressing S and then Shift Z, meaning we are only scaling in the Y and X directions. So the Z is out of the equation, and that's why it's not going anywhere upwards. Now I'm pressing S and Z, so we can just scale it like this. And I'm gonna make a mistake here just to show you one thing. So let's now add a sphere, UV sphere this time. And again, we have our lollipop tree. Let's maybe scale it like this. Again, S and Shift Z, so the Z axis is out of the operation. And the thing is, if I copy this object right now, so I just move it here and press Shift D. and press Shift D and scale it up. The problem is if I want to add a material and I didn't do it at first, well, technically nothing tragic happened because, well, I can create a new material, add a color, and, well, repeat it here and here and here and here again. But it's more efficient when you just think a little bit, when you plan a little bit ahead. So if you create a tree like this and you know you're gonna repeat it around the scene, it's better to do the materials and all the stuff before you start duplicating. Obviously, in Blender, there are ways of kind of finding a solution. Like, what if I already have 200 objects and now I need to apply a color to all of them? There are ways to do this quickly, but these are a little bit more advanced techniques and we are not gonna focus on them right now. So let's just fix this tree by making the color here and adding a color here, and we just delete those trees. That's it, and we just duplicate the one that is finished. No philosophy, to be honest. Oh, I pressed Control S. Yeah, that's another important shortcut. You might have not created that much in Blender until now, but once you start working on your things, pressing Control S to save things around is very important. So you can access the save tool from the file menu here and press just save and save as. If you want to keep this file in keep this scene in a separate file, then you select save as and you create a new file with a new name. But yeah, Control S should be a habit to use, especially when you're creating something more advanced like we do in here. So let's now copy this correct tree a little bit more. So Shift D, Shift Z. I will scale it. Shift D, Shift Z. I can scale it even like this. So we have multiple trees. Let's maybe add them along the river. So now I will do Shift D and X. And now I will press Shift R. Maybe one more time. Yeah. And now I can go. Sometimes, like right now, you can see with those many objects, we might have some problems with selecting stuff. Sometimes, let's say you just click something in the back by mistake. Then you press Shift D to duplicate and you see, whoa, how about that? Something else got copied as well. So yeah, you can just delete it and have problem fixed. But sometimes it's useful to switch to a different rendering mode for a time. Let's say a wireframe, which looks pretty interesting with the amount of models we have right now. You can switch to the solid mode and then turn on the X-ray thing, so you can also see the selection more precisely. Or you can just work in the rendered view and yeah, and just delete the stuff and just be careful what's happening around the scene. So let's create a few more trees. Maybe like here. Yeah, and as for the vegetation, I would say we are pretty much there. Let's still try adding a few more things. So basically at this point is really everything is really up to your imagination, because you have enough knowledge of the basic tools to actually go pretty wild with scenes like that. So for example, we can create another cylinder, scale it up like this, move somewhere around here maybe, or maybe not, maybe here, scale it up. We can duplicate it, Shift D and Z, just scale it down, scale it in the Z axis again. We can now snap a 3D cursor to the selected object, so the newly added stuff will be appearing here. So I press Shift A and let's add a cone, right? And wow, we have a tower, everybody. Add it here. You can add some very interesting details to your tower. So let's move a cursor here. Create a cube, a beloved cube. Now let's scale it upwards like this. Let's move it like that. And you can start adding some first details to your models. So let's just keep scaling. Let's just now maybe scale the roof like this. And you can add a new material to this element. Let's say it's something like made of wood, maybe. Make it darker. You can see it's pretty interesting, right? And now another trick. Let's move the 3D cursor to the selection. Cursor to selected. Now let's copy this object and rotate it around the cursor. So we could go to the top view, and again you can see changing the rendering modes to, let's say, a wireframe would be helpful at this point. So look at the trick that I'm doing. You go to the 3D cursor, to the pivot point menu and select 3D cursor. Now when I press Shift D, I kind of cancel the operation by pressing the escape, but the object is still duplicated. The thing is, it's only appearing at exactly the same point. So again, I select an object, I press Shift D, but instead of left clicking somewhere here, I just duplicate it and press escape. So the object is duplicated, but it's still in the original location. So I will switch to the top view and switch to the wireframe view again. And now when I press R, you can see I'm rotating around this pivot point, which is the tower center. So when I hold my control key, I can do this precise rotation. So, and you can see the degrees here in the left upper corner. So let's do a 90-degree rotation. So I do Shift D, escape, and I press R again. And with the Control button pressed and hold, I can rotate by 90 degrees again. And again, I do Shift D, escape, and a rotation by 90 degrees. So when I press Z and go to rendered view, well, I have a tower with some nice elements, and we can make the roof red. And we can also make the main element red. And we can do this in multiple ways. So you can create a new material if you want to, or you can, by pressing this ball here, you can select one of the existing materials. So you can use the material used here. You can use any other material already created. So let's use this one. You can actually rename the materials to find them easier. So if you click on this field here and call it, let's say, a red dash brick, and then the material is listed here with the same name. So let's say this material is called pine tree. and every time you select it you will see the name, and here you can, if you want to change a material, you can just click here and find it here under the exact same name. So yeah, let's finally get to the end of this video by showing you how to create a first render. How about that? To make a rendering, you actually only need one thing to be present in your 3D scene, and that's a camera. The camera we deleted in the beginning, the camera that is always available when you create a new file in Blender. And you can add a camera if you delete it by pressing the add and selecting the camera option here. So you can see there's this object that appears at the 3D cursor. You can move it around and rotate it and scale it even though the scale doesn't affect anything. But you can move it around, rotate it as any other object in the scene. And if you want to know what the camera is actually seeing, you just have to press this button here. And this moves you to the camera view. So right now we see a little bit of the tower, some trees here, and this lamp, which I try to select. When I press G, we can move it around. So if you want to frame the whole scene that we've created, we might need to move the camera a little bit further. And again, you can see it would be nice if we could just move it like in this direction. So we just switch to the normal view here, normal transformation orientation, and we just grab this gizmo handle here. So when you press a camera, now you can see a little bit more. Cool thing is, if you have a camera selected, it has to be orange. And when you move to the camera view, here you can obviously do the basic 3D viewport operations like zooming or panning, but once you decide to rotate the camera, it kind of jumps out of the frame. So remember that, yeah, simply when you just press your middle mouse button while in the camera view, it will go back to the normal perspective or orthographic view you have. But if you have a camera selected, and if you're in the camera view, when you press a G key now, you can see we can move the camera around because it's selected and because we are just grabbing it. If you hold your shift key and select any other additional objects, you can see the camera boundary here is orange. When you press G, the objects move around together with your camera. You probably don't want to have that, so you can also click here on the camera with your left mouse button and it gets selected. When you press anywhere else, it gets deselected. So you can either just select it here and then go to the camera view, or you can select the camera from here directly. So let's do it. Now let's press the G key to find a nice rendering perspective for our scene. Let's say it's gonna be something like this, but we're gonna rotate the camera. So let's rotate it like that. Maybe that's too much, but let's see. We are pressing the G key and moving it around. Maybe let's move it a bit further even. And let's rotate it like that. Yeah, now it's much better, I think. And you're almost good to go. So now the very last thing is just pressing the render button and the rendering will begin. So to do that, you just go to the render panel here and you click render image, or you can use an F12 shortcut. So when you do this, there should be a new window appearing, and boom, this is your rendering now. This is the picture you can show to your family, to your cat, to your loved ones, and say, hey, I spent a few hours learning Blender and this is the result. How about that? Of course, you can't show them the Blender window, because once you close Blender, this thing also disappears. So you have to save your image, and you do this by going here and selecting Save As. So now you create a wonderful full name for your image, and you can also select a file format here. So if you want to have a PNG or just a normal JPEG, just select it from here and then click Save. And you've just created your first rendering. Isn't that amazing? You're definitely not an absolute beginner to Blender any longer, and you're definitely on a good way of becoming a amazing Blender artist in the very near future. So this is a video 10 of the course. This is something I hope will help you rehearsing the knowledge we already discussed, and in the next parts we'll be getting much deeper into the 3D modeling, and later on into the materials, rendering settings, and creating your first more advanced images than this one. But still, you gotta admit, this looks pretty interesting, considering you're just learning Blender for a couple of hours, or maybe even less. So thanks for watching. I really hope this is helpful to you, and just see you in the next video. Bye bye.